In today's episode, we're diving into the real stuff, no fluff, no BS. We're talking about everything from how much protein do you really need to why am I not losing fat even though I'm working out 7 days a week? What's the deal with carbs after 6 p.m.? By the end of this, you'll have a clear, actionable answers to the questions that have been holding you back from reaching your goals. My goal is to give you guys raw, unfiltered, unbiased information based off of the evidence that I've read, the education that I've had, and the personal experiences I've had. Not selling you any sort of product that is going to skew my point of view on any of these things. I simply want to make you guys lean and lethal and become the best men that you can possibly be. All right, so I got my list of questions here. We're going to jump right through them. Going to try to bang them out, try to get this episode done in 15 minutes or less here. Question number 1, how much protein do I need to build muscle? So you'll hear a lot of different recommendations off of protein. A lot of them are based off of your lean body mass, which is the weight from your bones, your muscles, your organs, everything that takes nutrients to grow. That is your lean body mass. You can find that out by using like an in-body scale or a DEXA scan. But easier way to do this, you'll hear grams per pound of body weight. That is usually what I find the most easiest. Or you can also do your height in centimeters. And you usually find that these two numbers will get relatively close, within 10 to 15 grams or so. But I would say just use your body weight. Now, if you're somebody that has a lot of fat to lose, let's say you're 270 pounds, you're 6 foot, your ideal weight's 200 pounds that you'd like to get to, or maybe even 210. You don't need to eat 270 grams of protein. That's absurd. That's a lot. All that fat tissue does not need protein to maintain itself and grow. So I would go for 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of goal body weight. Now, that should be a protein target, whether you're trying to build muscle or lose fat, should be about within that range. Now, I'd go on the little bit higher end if I were in a deficit trying to lose fat to make sure we eat enough protein in to maintain that muscle mass. Now, if I was building muscle, I would actually probably go on a little bit on the lower end, maybe towards that 1 gram versus the 1.2 per pound of body weight, because you're going to get more benefit from having more carbs in there to fuel your workout, to replenish your muscle glycogen and whatnot. So you don't need as much when you are in a deficit. Question number 2, what is the best way to gain muscle without gaining fat? Raw and real answer, there is no way to gain muscle without gaining any fat. However, in order to minimize the amount of fat gain while you are in a surplus and focusing on building muscle, it's just about going a lot slower and managing your calories a lot more. So you'll hear a lean bulk versus a dirty bulk. Dirty bulk, you're in a pretty large surplus. That could be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 calories per day. And you're putting on well over a pound a week in body weight. Now, some people would argue that that gives you a bit of an advantage. Now, I would say your surplus or your muscle building phase is going to be a lot shorter because you're going to put on a lot of more body fat a lot quicker. So you're going to need to get back into a cut sooner. Excuse me. But if you want to minimize the amount of fat, it's simply just about going slow, only increasing your calories 3 to 10% per week, and only aiming to put on, depending on your training experience too, because if you're a newbie to the gym and training, you've never really followed a structured training program, you're going to get that newbie gains, you're going to be able to put on a lot of muscle a lot quicker, but only aiming for about 1 to even 3 pounds of weight gain per month is kind of that optimal rate of gain where you'll be minimizing your amount of fat gain. But make sure you're tracking your macros. You're still diligent with that. Just because you're in a surplus doesn't mean you should go ham with the calories and let everything get sloppy there. So no way to completely gain muscle without gaining any fat, but the slower, more calculated you go, the less fat you will put on in the process. How many times per week should I train each muscle group? So there's been lots of studies done on this. and there has been a range established. So you want about 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. Now, this is obviously going to be a little more individualized based off of maybe where your weak points are, what your goals are, what areas you'd like to develop more. But at a minimum, I would say try to hit 10 sets per muscle group per week, and at a maximum, 20 sets per muscle group per week. If we're doing a whole lot more than 20, I would say that you need to increase the intensity at which you are training, because if you're able to recover, and this is also assuming that you're not taking any sort of gear and you're a natural athlete. If you're doing 20 plus sets, you're probably not getting the most out of each set. And on the other side, if you're doing less than 10, you're probably not giving your body as much of a stimulus as you could for an optimal kind of rate of muscle gain, if we want to call it that. Next question, what is the best rep and set scheme for hypertrophy? So really anywhere between 4 to 12 reps is beneficial for hypertrophy. Now, I would use kind of periodizations and variations of that. If you have a goal to focus more on strength gain, maybe going towards that lower end of the spectrum for a lot of your training, especially those bigger compound lifts, and then some more of the isolation accessory work going a bit higher in that 8 to 12 rep range, especially things like shoulders, arms. You can definitely go a lot higher than things like squats, legs, or those bigger muscle groups that require a lot more energy. And two, the biggest factor is your proximity to failure. So as long as you're getting close, if not to failure on your sets, you are going to get the necessary stimulus. What we don't want is you're doing such a high amount of reps that you're gassing out cardiovascularly before your muscles actually reach that point of failure. So we don't want to be doing too much where it turns into cardio. We want to reach that point of muscular failure, but we also don't want to be doing too little as to where we're not giving a good amount of blood flow and stimulus to our muscles. Do I need to take supplements like creatine and BCAAs? Creatine, hands down, yes. Everybody should be taking creatine, every gender, every age. There's lots of research on creatine. It's the most researched sports supplement out there. And the benefits aren't just strength training and muscle gain either. There's a lot of benefits that have came out in the last couple years regarding cognitive function and cognitive health and decrease in risk of dementia and Alzheimer's and those sorts of diseases. So, and it's a very, very, very cheap and effective supplement as well. You can get 100 servings for like $18, I think, on Amazon. You just need monohydrate. That is it. All these other forms there's no added benefit. A lot of them are just monohydrate with some other fancy name. They might dissolve a little bit better in water, but it all does the same thing at the end of the day. All the research is on monohydrate, and you're not going to see any more benefit paying 4 times as much for some other fancy form of creatine as you would from simply getting monohydrate and getting 100 servings for the $18. As far as BCAAs go, don't waste your money with that. If you're getting an adequate amount of protein in, then you're getting enough amino acids that buying more expensive supplements like BCAAs is not going to give you any added benefit. And all BCAAs are the 3 branched chain amino acids. So we have 9 total essential amino acids. So you'll see EAAs and BCAAs. EAAs are the 9 essential amino acids, and 3 out of those 9 are BCAAs, which are the branched chain amino acids. And if you're eating a complete source of protein, a steak, a whey protein shake, it has all 9 essential amino acids. Now, if you're somebody who, for some odd reason, you don't eat meat and you're a vegan or vegetarian, which I don't understand why anybody would do that. Then supplementing with some sort of EAA or BCAA would be beneficial for that particular case. Next question, is it better to lift heavy weights or do more reps? So we kind of addressed this with the rep scheme already. You don't want to make it turn into cardio. You want to lift heavy enough so that you're reaching failure at a point where you're not too cardiovascularly taxed. So if I had to just straight up answer this question, I would say choose heavy weights over more reps for sure. You see a lot of these group fitness classes that do very light weights, and they're going just as quick on that last rep as they were on the first rep. They're not even getting close to failure, and that is not going to give you the stimulus you need to get stronger or to build muscle mass. What is the, kind of already answered this question too, so we're going to skip that. How many calories should I eat to lose weight? So this is very, very person dependent. Nobody can just give you a number off the top of your head and that's going to be your magic number where you start losing weight. Now you have a few different options here. One, you can go to an online TDE calculator that'll calculate your total daily energy expenditure, at least an estimated version of that, and give you an estimated number on what your maintenance calories are. And then a lot of them will give you an estimated amount of calories to be in a surplus and build muscle if that's your goal, or to be in a deficit and lose fat if that's your goal. However, at the end of the day, these are all guesses and you're going to have to make some adjustments to what those are. They might be right off the bat, but they also might be very wrong. If you're somebody that is already severely under eating, you only eat 1 to 2 meals a day, you're eating less than 2,000 calories as a guy, then likely you need to do a reverse diet and focus on probably getting your protein up substantially and fueling your body so that your body can be in a nice healthy state, and eating a lot more than 2,000 calories or less every single day in order to be in a spot to easily and healthily lose body fat. So the second option, if you don't use the online calculator, is simply just start tracking your food as you're already eating. Don't change how you eat in any way. Track your food for 3 to 5 days. Also, get your body weight in the morning after you go to the bathroom, before you eat, and track that along with it. If your body weight's staying relatively the same, now granted, you'll see fluctuations in your body weight, 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 pounds per day, just with the water weight fluctuations. But get the average for those 3 to 5 days. If your weight is relatively staying the same, that average for your food that you tracked for those 3 days will become your maintenance calories. And then from there, you can decide whether you're eating a good enough amount of calories where you can create a deficit by subtracting 10 to 25% of your calories, or 500 calories about for most people, to create that deficit, start losing weight, or get into a slight surplus like we talked about earlier if your goal is to put on muscle mass. Can I drink alcohol and still get lean? So most people think alcohol, the biggest downside with it is simply just the calories. And while if you're having very sugary drinks, the calories are definitely going to play a huge role there. Although I don't think the calories are the biggest downside of alcohol. Excuse me. In my opinion, the biggest downside of alcohol is its effect on your sleep. So if you have any sort of fitness tracker, sleep tracker, you will notice significant decrease in your sleep quality on nights when you are drinking 1 or more alcoholic beverages. That is going to impact your hormones. It's going to impact your recovery that night. It's going to impact your decision making. You'll be a lot more likely to choose bad foods that are going to put you way out of a deficit. You're more likely to overeat and binge on foods that night when you are intoxicated. Alcohol also inhibits muscle protein synthesis, which is basically your body using protein to build new muscle tissue. So there's lots of other negative effects of alcohol that will contribute to your body composition and over a period of time though too. We got to take that into effect. You have one wedding one night a month, that's not going to it's not going to make or break your progress. But if you're continuously going out drinking multiple nights a week, getting very poor sleep, not recovering, eating in excess food when you're drinking, in addition to the calories from alcohol, it is going to make losing weight very, very difficult. So if getting lean, losing some body fat is something that is important to you, especially like in this small phase, you don't have to cut it out forever. I would highly recommend cutting alcohol out for the 12 to 16 weeks where you are in a deficit and focusing on losing body fat, because you're putting a lot of effort in other areas of your life. So why sacrifice a lot of that extra effort with a few drinks that aren't going to make your night that more enjoyable, and you're going to feel a whole lot better in the morning. So that would be my recommendation there. How do I get rid of stubborn belly fat? There is no way, well, I wish there was, there is no way to spot reduce fat. So just like your jawline or your abs or your muffin top or whatever it is, all these different areas where people talk about like the exercise to get a defined jawline or the best exercise to see your abs or whatever it is, or to lose your stomach fat. There's no exercise you can do that is going to make those areas more defined or leaner. While yes, those exercises can build up that muscle tissue underneath the fat 100%, but the only way to get rid of that fat is to be in a calorie deficit, lose weight over a long period of time, and your body's going to naturally take it from where it wants. For guys, usually the last place to go will be that lower stomach. You'll start to see the kind of face and the jawline lean out pretty early on, relatively early on, and then the low back fat tends to go next, and then the low stomach belly area is usually the last to go in terms of body fat. But don't be frustrated. It's going to take a little bit of time. You're only going to lose about 1 to maybe 2 pounds if you're pretty big already per week. And it takes a couple weeks for your body to get used to a deficit when you first start. So don't give up right away if week 1 you don't see 1 or 2 pounds down on the scale. Sometimes it takes a couple weeks to get things rolling, and then you just got to be consistent with it after that. I lift every day. Why can't I get lean and see my abs? Exercise is a very, very small part of the equation when it comes to fat loss. If you look at our total daily energy expenditure, we have 4 main parts. We have our BMR, which is our basal metabolic rate. That is how many calories we burn just living if we don't do anything. Then we have our NEAT, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That is all the calories we burn from walking around, twiddling your thumbs, blinking, talking, waving your hand. All these little movements throughout the day make up our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And then we have our thermic effect of feeding. That is the calories your body burns from eating, digesting, absorbing, chewing, all of the processes revolving around feeding. That is the third largest category as far as the calories we burn on a daily basis. And the smallest category is exercise activity thermogenesis. And that is only about 8% of your total daily energy expenditure. And you shouldn't be training every day either. Training should only be, for most of you, 3 to 5 days at most per week. If you're not on gear, you don't have some hyper recovery process or the ability to really relax and recover every single day. If you're training hard enough as you should be, focusing on progressive overload, getting close to failure, you should not be able to train 7 days a week without any sort of performance enhancing drug. So, first recommendation, increase the intensity of your training. The purpose of training isn't to burn calories, it's to give your muscle a proper stimulus. So, train 3 to 5 days per week, depending on your experience level, how long you've been following a structured program. If you're relatively new, you can 100% get by with 3 to 4 days a week. If you've been training for years, 5 days a week is probably optimal for you. But that training is only 5% of your total calories burned. So you need to control for your calories. I suggest tracking your macros and make sure that once you establish your maintenance, like we talked about earlier, make sure you're consistently in a calorie deficit and that you're eating enough protein. The protein is going to make sure that you're losing fat mass and retaining your muscle. If we're just in a large calorie deficit and not controlling for protein, there's a good chance we're going to lose some muscle mass along with some fat mass, along with some water weight. So be in a calorie deficit, eat adequate amounts of protein, like we talked about earlier. Do that for the next 12 to 16 weeks, and I guarantee you will start to see your abs. All right, we're at 22 minutes here, so we will wrap it up with this last question. What's the deal with carbs after 6 p.m.? So we've heard don't eat past 8 p.m. It'll make you fat. This guy asked carbs past 6 p.m. What is the deal there? Now, there's no magical thing that eating past a certain period is going to make you gain or lose weight. It literally just comes down to, like we talked about, calories you eat that day being less than the calories you burned that day over a consistent period of time. That is the only thing that'll dictate weight loss or weight gain. Now, I will say you don't want to have large meals too late at night, close to when you're going to bed, because that will impact the quality of sleep that you are able to get. When you eat a large meal, your body temperature naturally rises during all those processes, the thermic effect of feeding that it takes to break down, absorb, digest, store that food. Your body temperature rises. But when we go to sleep, in order to get into that deep sleep and REM sleep, our body temperature needs to drop a few degrees. So those two things are going to counteract. And if you eat a large meal right before bed, your body's going to be working on digesting it, storing it. Your body's going to heat up a little, and that's going to negatively impact the quality of sleep. So once again, like with all these things, like one day is not going to make or break your progress. But if you are consistently eating a large meal within, I would say, the 3 hours right before bed every single night or multiple times a week, it's going to negatively impact your sleep, which is going to negatively impact your hormones, which is going to negatively impact your recovery, which is going to negatively impact your energy and your focus and your ability to make good decisions the next day. So don't eat in the 3 hours before bed. But we'll do a whole podcast here. This is only number 2. We'll do a whole podcast on sleep in the coming weeks in order to, that's such a crucial aspect of health and fitness is that sleep aspect. So we'll do a whole podcast on how to optimize your sleep, so that if you do a fitness tracker, you're getting sleep scores in the 90s every single day. That is the goal. So that's a wrap for episode 2. Thanks for tuning in to the Lean and Lethal podcast. If you found this episode helpful, hit subscribe, leave a review, share it with a friend, and until next time, stay lean, stay lethal, and keep seeking discomfort.